Welcome to our cafe. Would you care to see a menu or hear a list of our specials this evening, or do you already know what you would prefer to order? No need for specials. You're here for the sourdough bagels. I thought so, but I always like to ask. Okay, do you know what type you would like? Well, our most famous selections are our jalapeno cheddar. Just a bit of heat there with the jalapenos, but it balances nice with the cheddar cheese. We also have a nice cinnamon sugar if the sweet tooth is something that strikes your fancy, or the everything bagel, your traditional seasoning on a wonderfully tangy and chewy sourdough bagel. The jalapeno bagel, my personal favorite. It's a great choice. All right, and how many would you like? Just the one? Excellent. Any cream cheese, avocado, anything else with that? Nope, just the bagel. Sourdough is great when enjoyed alone by itself. It has a very distinct taste that I think some find challenging, yet very enjoyable. All right, and can I offer you a coffee while you wait? Of course, we make all of our bagels fresh, so you will have the most recently pulled from the oven bagel. A coffee? Excellent. What would you like? Of course, we have cold brews. We have iced lattes, hot lattes, black coffee, of course. You'll take the house Nespresso, iced or hot? Iced. And would you like any particular flavor of syrup, or just the traditional latte? Our house blend of syrup. Excellent. Any half and half or sugar or anything like that? Nope, just the house syrup. Okay. I'm actually training a new staff member today, so they will be helping me and observing the method as we prepare your bagel. All right, I will go ahead and step to the side. I'll put your order in, and I'll get that coffee to you immediately. Hold tight one moment. All right, let me get that iced Nespresso prepared for you. It shouldn't take but a moment. We first like to utilize our locally sourced milk to ensure freshness and a smooth finish. Next, our espresso pods. And now, but a brief wait. And ready, before you know it, we have our fresh and homemade syrups here. Would you like 1 or 2 scoops? 2. Perfect. And a brief stir. of your iced latte, 2 scoops of our house blend syrup, and please do enjoy. And I am sure that those bagels will be out shortly. I will go check on our trainee in the back and make sure that we are moving along nicely. Enjoy your coffee. Alright, well, I guess you're the one that I'm training today, so you are in luck because we have a very busy day ahead of us. A lot of orders and a lot of potential for learning. So please do pay attention and try to hold your questions for the end of the demonstration. Once I get my hands into the dough, I don't prefer to be disturbed, but I do also want you to feel comfortable in the process. So the first thing we have is a nice prepared sourdough mound of dough here. I've taken the liberty of preparing this dough prior to your training. The art of creating the perfectly tangy and delicately chewy sourdough loaf is quite the art form, and you won't be trusted to complete that step in the process until you are awarded apprenticeship. So we will start with the more simple of the steps, which is the cutting and shaping of the individual bagel pieces. We have our most popular selections of bagels to be prepped today: our cinnamon sugar, our everything bagel, and our jalapeno cheddar. We will prepare a nice selection of all 3 here today with this batch. The first thing we are going to do is cut a section of the overall loaf and prepare a nice and compact piece. Once we have a nice, very gently massaged portion of the dough, we will try to make as spherical of a shape as possible and set it to the side to allow time for it to rise. Of course, the preparation of sourdough is a art form that requires patience, diligence, and attention to detail. Skipping but only one step can be a catastrophic mistake that can undo hours and hours of work. It's best to look at your tangy and chewy sourdough creation as an extension of your own soul, to be molded and taken care of in the utmost gentle and and loving way. Perfect. And our next piece. You can see that there's a nice tact to the sourdough already, which means that our preparation has gone quite smoothly, and our end product will be up to the standards here at our cafe, which can be quite high. Notice that I am transferring the dough from hand to hand as to not apply too much pressure at any one point. And for any pieces of the dough that feel a bit too firm, it's best to apply just a bit of graceful tapping. Let's go ahead and provide this piece just a bit more space, room to grow. And on to the next. Notice that some of our pieces are bigger than the others. We like to make sure that our jalapeno cheddar bagels have just a bit more dough and surface area for those jalapenos to become lost in, lest your bagel become a bit too spicy or challenging to consume. Our cinnamon sugars bagel variety can offer a bit of kick in terms of sugar, so we do like to make sure they are a bit smaller. And I think we can get 2 bagels out of this last piece. Do you have any questions so far? That is a good question. How much time is involved in an expertly artisan crafted sourdough baked good? Well, it depends on the particular type of baked goods you are going for. Sometimes it can range from hours to even more hours. And on to our final piece. As you can see, 7 bagels out of that particular mound of dough. And now we will give them time to rise. This is your final chance to adjust the shape ever so slightly, and then we will give these about an hour or so to rise, and we will move to the other side of the kitchen to continue your training on a batch that is closer to completion. Any questions about the shaping process so far? Excellent. All right, let's move on. All right, this batch here is freshly out of our boiling pot. The boiling process is a very important step in the sourdough making experience, and it gives it that very unique, chewy texture that is quite nice. So we are going to make 4 jalapeno cheddar. That is our most common and asked for type of bagel, and we are going to do 2 cinnamon sugar and 2 everything bagel. We're going to start with the jalapeno cheddar. I like to begin with just a nice sprinkle of cheddar cheese to give it a nice, good base on all 4 of those. And don't worry if there's a bit of overlap with the cheese on some of the other bagels. There is always time to clean that up before the finishing touches are applied. This process is done directly before the baking process begins. And of course you can see that they have been expertly shaped by our connoisseurs here in the back. Okay, and now we get a nice, good placement of jalapenos. Remember always to avoid contact with your eyes after handling the jalapenos here. You can feel that spice from them just in the air here after handling. Of course, these will be pressed and baked into the dough during the baking process. You did remember to wash your hands, of course. Excellent. Protocol is strict and always to be followed. Now, we placed our jalapenos with our right hand, so we now will use the left hand and apply the other toppings, always to ensure that we don't get that spice into an unwanted customer's hands. We will begin with the cinnamon sugar next. I find that it's always best to use the sweet topping before finishing with the everything bagel seasoning, because even if you do get just a bit of residual brown sugar on your hands during the everything bagel process, that seasoning will hide that taste quite nicely, and there won't be really any way of spoiling your seasoning process on that final bagel. And of course, we are always quite liberal with our placement of the cinnamon sugar here. Some of that will be lost in the baking process, so it's never a bad idea to add just a bit extra. And now the everything bagel seasoning. Once again, the richness of this seasoning hides that residual sweet seasoning that was on our fingertips after that last application. And like I said, a lot of this will be lost during the baking process. And now we will prep these bagels for our baking process in the ovens, wash our hands, and get on to the next batch. I think we have a batch getting ready to come out of the oven as we speak. All right, let's go. And here you can see a finished product of our famous bagels. You can see how those jalapenos are now perfectly baked onto those bagels. The cinnamon sugar is a nice golden brown, and that everything bagel seasoning is ever so delicately placed and dispersed across the top of the bagel. Of course, we have many hungry customers out front, and they will be happy to know that we have bagels hot and ready. We have one order that was placed for a jalapeno cheddar, and as you can hear, firmness of that bagel is to perfection. That cheese is perfectly baked in, and no doubt that texture is perfect. Let's go ahead and get this out to our customer, lest they wait any longer. Do you have any questions before we head out front? All right, you have done fairly well today, and hopefully you have taken in what you've learned and what you've seen. We will begin again tomorrow. Why don't you stay here and package the rest of these up, follow the orders on the counter, and see if you can get a head start on cleaning up. I will go meet our hungry guest. All right, and as requested, a beautiful jalapeno cheddar bagel. If you would like anything else with your bagel, cream cheese, avocado, like I said, or a refill of your coffee, are you all right there? Perfect. Well, please do. Just summon one of us over and we will help you immediately. There's a knife there at the table, and you are welcome to cut it exactly how you would prefer. Please do enjoy. Once again, if you need anything else, please do let me know. Enjoy your meal.